Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here in studio with founder and editor Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
Oh, going fine. Thank you very much for asking.
All right, let's get into what we're going to cover today. Today, we're going to cover how we get more useful energy out of renewables and fossil fuels. We're going to talk about $215 trillion to save the planet as a bargain.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the new Kia EV3 that's coming out. We're going to talk about an AirBnB partnership with ChargePoint charging stations.
Yep.
And that's going to be the meat of what we're mostly going to talk about today.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah. All right. We'll see. Maybe we'll have a slightly lower show. Maybe we won't. All right. So anyways, let's start out with talking about we get more useful energy out of renewables than fossil fuels.
Yeah, this is really fascinating. I came across this one and posted it actually yesterday, and of course talk about it today. But basically, there is a term which I learned a long time ago when I started exploring this whole concept of peak oil, if you remember that, which was big early on when I started getting into EV world, because we thought the world was going to, hit the maximum amount of oil it could produce in by 2010 or some number like that. And I learned this term EROI, which is energy returned on basically
investment.
The investment. Yeah. And that's sort of, the reason the Saudis could dominate the way they could, because they could pull, a barrel of oil out of the ground for, I think at that particular point in time, was like $10 a barrel, where everybody else was having to spend $20, $30, $40, $50 a barrel to get their crude out of the ground. And so the theory is that you could have the amount of money that you put into investing into getting that oil, you got a huge return out of that. So it was worth the investment. In fact, I was just reading that the banks, the global banks in the world that provide investment capital, they invest, like, since 2016, they've invested something like $7 trillion, funding fossil fuel development. $7 trillion, and that doesn't include the trillions of dollars that governments give oil companies and fossil fuel companies in the form of tax credits and subsidies and things. So, but what this report did is they said, well, let's look at this differently. Think of pulling up. Am I being pinged here? Sorry about that. Crazy phone. So these researchers said, let's look at this differently. Yes, you can pull that out of the ground for 10, 15, 20, whatever it is, depending on where you are, out of the ground. But then what happens to it? Well, it's got to go through this complex system of transport, refineries, refining. You probably don't realize this, but for every gallon of oil that is refined into gasoline, you have to use 5 kilowatts of electricity. So you've got that. Then you've got to figure out how to distribute it out to the retail market and things. And then you got to put it in this really horribly inefficient gasoline engine where you can.
So you're saying to refine 1 gallon of gas, you have to use 5 kilowatts of electricity?
5 kilowatts of electricity to refine 1 gallon of gasoline. Yeah.
Which takes 5 pounds of coal to power that electricity.
Yeah.
Or
whatever your source of electricity is coming
from.
Right. Okay. So by the time you get to all this and you actually get work done by that gallon of gasoline, right? It's only moving you, it's a 20% efficiency, but then you've got all of the brakes and heat and exhaust and things. So, but everything's said and done, only about 10% of that energy that you just invested in actually does work for you. Okay. On the other hand, if you look at renewables and wind, apart from the turbines that got taken down across the river in Iowa by the tornado the other day, that renewable energy, yes, it costs more upfront to create that. but the payback is a lot shorter, and the useful energy that you get from that in terms of sunlight falls on it, it kicks off those electrons, they get fed into the grid. That then goes to either heat pumps or hot water heaters or electric cars or televisions, computers, all that. So the amount of work that you're getting for the energy that's being generated is much better than what you get from using any fossil fuel for that matter. So it's a long read, but it's certainly an informative read. And the interesting thing is that at the end, bottom line, they say, what's the bottom line on this? If you had just sum it up in one phrase, plug it in.
Yeah. Well, it's weird to think about 5 kilowatts of electricity being used, because you think about that in an EV, that would be about 20 miles of range just from that slice of the production.
And your dog agrees with us on that.
Seems to.
Or is he arguing?
I'm sure somebody's coming home.
Yeah, somebody's coming home. And what's interesting is there was an article came out just a couple of days ago where they were saying that plugging in electric cars has used more electricity than, and it was some, I don't know, the state of India, or the country of India, or some figure like that, which was meant, I guess, in a way, as to a side swipe at EVs. They're using all this energy. Well, we were talking earlier about how much energy it takes to do a Chat GPT query now, right?
Right. Well, yeah, it was Uganda that all of the electric cars in the United States use as much electricity as the entire nation of Uganda.
Right, but my point is that they weren't counting the kilowatts it takes to make that gallon of gasoline. Now, what if you threw that number in? I tried to find some number to come up with the share, and I couldn't. My mathematics level isn't at the level I can figure out how many. But I think the U.S. burns something like 139 billion or 137 billion gallons of gasoline a year. Okay. American drivers. Now multiply that number by 5 kilowatts.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. They talk about overtaxing the grid.
How many megawatts does that?
Now, I'm going to tell you though, Bill, that the people that run oil refineries are not dummies. They are, they're all incredibly bright, incredibly educated, all that. And I'm sure they're probably using gas flare-offs, methane, all kinds of other things to burn that are byproducts of the gasoline. So it's probably not costing them anything to make those kilowatts, but it is interesting to see that they're taking some efficiency from somewhere else to make, to try to fix some of this inefficiency in this other area.
Yep.
But
still, could that electricity be used somewhere else?
Oh, it could.
More efficiently, yeah.
Yeah. So what they do in Texas is now they put Bitcoin mining farms there at the place where the gas flare-offs are at to use that the excess electricity. So it is kind of interesting.
And then we have to get the federal government to step in, like they just did in California, and give, I don't remember the number, $7 million or some number, millions of dollars of taxpayer money to plug the orphan wells in California, to plug the orphan gas wells and oil wells in California that were abandoned by these, we'll privatize the profit, and we'll publicize, we'll externalize the costs.
A lot of the wells that were done in the Salton Sea are now being reconverted as ways to extract lithium.
Sure.
And other precious metals.
And a case can be made that the oil industry has this great skill of drilling really deep in the ground where the earth starts to get real hot. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we can use that heat then for all kinds of processes, not only extracting the lithium and what other minerals there might be in there that have value, but we can then use that to heat buildings, factories, run. I mean, you can actually take heat and use that to run air conditioners, right?
Well, if you look at El Salvador is the first country to really make Bitcoin their legal tender.
Yep.
And they have extensive geothermal from volcanic activity there.
Right.
And so they're mining Bitcoin as well there. It's part of what the government does. And so they're both buying Bitcoin and they are mining Bitcoin, and they basically get free electricity from that. They're that they're converting from the geothermal. Of course, we all know it's not really free, because it's kind of the big point about this is that fossil fuels are cheaper to make on the front end, whereas when we put up a wind turbine, all the money's spent on the front end, right? And then after that, you have costs from the transmission, but most of that is essentially free energy after that.
The fuel is free.
Yeah, forever. The transmission is not. Yeah,
no,
and
but then again, there's a refinery in Houston, Texas, down in Port Arthur or whatever it is down there where they refine all that. Then think of all the costs it takes to get it to pump it from there to the the Northeast, or to pump it to up here to Williams, here in Omaha, where they can store it in those big tanks out by the airport. And that all costs. And I wonder what those pumps run on.
Yeah. Well, I can tell people all the time, you can have electricity in places, but if you're going to have a gas station, you got to have electric too.
You got to have electric.
So there's places in the world that are better served for EVs than they are for gas, just because there's no access to gas.
Right.
And it's really funny what we take for granted here in this country. I had somebody comment on one of the videos that was talking about how where they live in the UK, by charging at home, it's 1/9 the cost of buying gas. Okay. But, they do have the ridiculous, if they went to a public charger, the price is ridiculous over there.
Yeah.
But for home charging, it's crazy cheap to think about how much better that is. Yeah, it sounds like you're racking up points over there.
I don't know what's going on here. Why that just constantly stop it? I'm gonna see if I turn this thing off here. Power off. Jeez.
At one point, I thought it was on my computer.
No, it's this phone of mine going off. I don't know what's happening. We'll just kill it. Yes, power
I thought
off.
maybe you're part of a group chat. It's not telling you have a text message.
What's going on? I just started doing that.
Maybe it was an alarm set to remind you to get on for the show.
No, it's there's I get some news alerts and things like that, but this is like on crazy. I don't know why, what's happening here. So, all right, let's
move on. Let's move on to the $215 trillion to save the planet as a bargain.
Yeah.
That is a big number. Now, this is saying that by 2050, which is,
not that far away.
26 years.
26 years.
Yeah, that this is what it's going to cost to save the planet.
And that, as they point out, is saving the planet where the average temperature is not the 1.5 we wanted originally to keep it down. This is 1.75 centigrade. And, I don't know if you've, how close you've been following some of these things. I mean, there's an article today where I saw where they were asking about why are tornadoes, and those of us have been, we had one last week, a week before that, and we've got some more nasty weather coming this weekend. Why is that? And then why is all this flooding, worse since Harvey down in Houston and Louisiana? Why are howler monkeys dropping dead out of the trees in Costa Rica? Why are they having these horrible heat wave in Florida? Why have insurance rates on home insurance in Florida doubled? Right.
And it's car insurance too.
Yeah.
But car insurance went up 22% last year on average.
Yeah.
But yeah, that homeowners insurance going up 125% in Florida last year is just crazy, because you know that's for the whole state, that 125. If you and I'm sure it's worse if you live on the coast than it is if you live in
Oh
the
yeah.
interior.
Yeah.
So it probably
Yeah.
didn't go up nearly as much in Orlando as it would have went up in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
You know,
Or
so
Tampa or St. Pete or
right.
any of those areas. Yeah.
Yeah. But
But anyway, so
while
yeah, so the article is pointing out this was compiled by Bloomberg New Energy Finance, which was, of course, founded by former Mayor Bloomberg and the Bloomberg News Organization, and they're saying that the interest. I love the way this article starts because it talks about how we all hate to see a credit card where we can't pay it all off. So then we get that little bit of interest tacked on. And then the next time it comes around, we not only have the new balance, but we have now more interest rate on top of that. And that interest rate, and this is what happened to a lot of these college kids. They took out these college loans, and it was the interest rate that's killing them as it builds
right.
up over 10, 20 years. So the point, they starts off by saying, last year, or the last time they did a report, it was like, I think, $196 trillion to tackle and try to control successfully engage in strategies that will help us control the overheating of the planet. And it says now this latest report is up to $215 trillion. So it's, and then of course they said, and that's a bargain. So it's an interesting article. It's not a long read, but I think it sort of helps put things in perspective that we really need to get serious about that. We're nowhere near as serious as we need to be about tackling this problem, and it's going to be expensive, and it's going to get more expensive as time goes forward.
Right. Well, and in that regard, they're saying here that the investment needs to be 4.8 trillion a year through 2030.
Yeah.
And if not, then that number is going to keep going up each year. So
yeah. Again, another good read. I like to, it'd be fun just to talk about cars. But there is so much involved in the whole sphere of, manufacturing and using of, motor vehicles that we need to also take into consideration. So I try to highlight those things. I try to get people to, think about it, be aware of it. Dave is reading the article, so. Oop, there he is. Dave, you disappeared. All right, so moving on. Well, I asked you, take a look at that. Maybe we talk about the Airbnb thing. Airbnb is, of course, the group that takes and provides a connection between homeowners who are happy to sort of lease out rooms or apartments or whatever they happen to have, the mother-in-law structure in the backyard, those type of things. That what they've done, they've gone and done a deal with ChargePoint, which is one of the large one of the larger EV and longer running enduring electric car charging companies. And so they are now encouraging people. They're giving them a discount, encouraging the people that their Airbnb customers or hosts, I think is the proper term, to put in electric car chargers. And if you do that, Airbnb is subsidizing. It's something like $250, some number like that, to encourage people to do that. And the thing I found is interesting is in this story, they said that there are already, I think it was 80,000 Airbnb hosts that have registered that have electric car chargers, which I
Yeah,
thought was that's wow, really. Now the question is, of course, what kind of charger that is. Is it just a 110 plug, that you can plug into outside the house, or is it a full blown EV charger that you can access when the owner isn't accessing it?
yeah, it's a 36% discount on ChargePoint home EV chargers and $100 off installation if it's
Right.
purchased on the ChargePoint website, and then an additional $200 discount to the first 1,000 hosts to buy an EV charger through
Yeah.
ChargePoint. The only thing is the chargers themselves, the level 2 chargers, aren't expensive. It's that getting the electrician to come out and hook
Yeah,
it up.
I was thought $100. I think it was $1,500 to
Yeah,
just to wire mine, and I did not put in a dedicated charger. I just used the one that came with the car because it allows me to charge at level 2 as well as level 1. So I didn't have to go to that expense, but still cost me more than $100
well, the
to.
big cost is for the run. It really depends on how far your garage is
Yeah,
from the box.
yeah.
In a lot of people's houses, the electrical box is in the garage, and that makes it cheap.
Oh, that makes it so much easier. Yes.
Yes.
Mine is right there, and my garage is way over
Yeah,
there.
well, that's why it was so expensive. The only
Yeah.
thing about this, and I think this is great, not trying to knock them, but they want you to use their designated company for doing they use the same company for all the nationwide installs. Whereas if you went out and found your
Yeah.
own electrician to come and do it,
Right.
it would be cheaper.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that it's kind of a misnomer. You get $100 off if you buy it through them, but they're marking up that installation cost from that electrician as well, and you could do that yourself.
Hey, if anyone listening to this has had experience with this, comment on it. Let us know what you had to pay. Did you use this system, or did you hire your own electrician to come in and do it? Are you an Airbnb host?
Yeah.
And tell us what your experiences have been. I'd like to hear.
All right. Let's see if there was
Comment below.
anything else, because there was a lot of news about this today. There was all kinds of articles about the Airbnb thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And let me see. Searches on Airbnb using EV charger filter grew more than 80% from 2022 to 2023. Now, that doesn't mean that 80% of people were looking for it. It just means that 80% more people were looking for it than the year before. So there's big demand for it. And part of it, I suspect, is because you now have car rental agencies renting out
Mm-hmm.
EVs.
Right.
And that didn't used to be the case. So now if you're going to rent out an EV,
And you're going
and
to
you're going to
stay
stay in
somewhere,
Airbnb,
just use Airbnb. Yeah. You're
yeah,
going to stay
just
in
use the
Airbnb
charger
and
there.
rent a car from Hertz or, whoever has one.
Yeah, and it's not really like it's super expensive to fill up a car,
No.
from the house. You're talking a few bucks
Yeah.
each time. So it's not like it's gonna cost the host a whole lot of extra money in
And,
terms of
and,
that.
I was kind of thinking about this. If you are a person who is so inclined to want to try an EV, or you own an EV and you're going on a trip and you're going to stay at Airbnb, I'm just wondering whether, if I were an Airbnb host operator, and I've looked at it, I studied, I had some ideas about doing something like that. Would that attract a clientele that I would be more interested in having than a bunch, the problems they've had with people coming in and having, beer parties and trashing the place.
Right.
I would think that would be an incentive to attract, I don't want to say a better clientele. That's unfair, but a clientele that would be more socially conscious, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, they had a real big problem. There was a big party in Papillion. I think they arrested like 40 people at an Airbnb.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, a couple of that was in the past month. But yeah, you would think the EV owners would probably be a little more responsible, but you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. I've never heard any comments about people wanting to get full self-driving so that they can get drunk or anything like that. So
Yeah.
that'll be the next thing, right? So that the car can
Yeah.
drive them home.
That's
You hop in the passenger seat You hop
Right.
in the passenger seat. It's like, what? You know.
Take me home.
Yeah. All right. So next story I want to talk about is this is this is from Finland. Okay. So this isn't maybe applying to everybody, but a Google data center in Finland is using waste heat to warm the town that it's at. And got a little diagram here showing how the data center over here is expelling heat recovery, and it's going to everything from greenhouses, other businesses,
Yep.
communities and businesses will receive low carbon heat. And it's an interesting the strategy there. Finland's kind of a cold country. I'm sure it's probably colder than Nebraska.
Oh yeah.
And yeah,
And
and
further north and darker longer. So
yes. So this is probably quite beneficial for them. I think Finland's a country of only maybe about 5 million people or so. So
I don't
it's
know.
probably like Nebraska and Iowa, you know, in that regard. But
Well, interesting. I was in this, using heat. They use the heat off of the geothermal system, um, basically the volcanic systems in Iceland, and
mhm.
that's what they use to run power plants and heat their homes and their businesses and things. And they took us on a sort of a bus tour of basically the Reykjavik Peninsula area, and we passed by a greenhouse that had banana trees in it. They were growing bananas in Iceland using geothermal energy, which is but they have long dark periods in winter, but then the summertime, it's light there until 1 o'clock in the morning, and it gets, starts to get light again by 4. And so they've got real long days of sunlight in their summer period. So I guess that's doable, but yeah, it was kind of funny.
Yeah, it is. And they're figuring this saves 1,400 tons of CO2 emissions every year just for this one town, which equals a reduction of about 60% compared to the previous system of individual on-site boilers.
Yeah. Now, what are they using to fire those with? I wonder. Are they?
It doesn't say.
They have, well, yeah, they would. I think they have nuclear up there, and they have biofuels.
They have nuclear. I don't think they have nuclear in Finland. I think they have nuclear in Sweden. I mean, they could be importing the electricity from Sweden.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we should look it up sometime and find out where's the power come from in Finland to
Yeah.
run those servers to let them use that excess heat. So
I bet they get a lot of hydroelectric up there. I would
possibly.
suspect, but it's hard to
But
say.
then again, wintertime, that poses a problem for.
Yeah, I get it. Water freezing over.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anything else to this? They're heating 47,000 square meters of local public buildings, which would be
Mhm.
about 470,000 square feet for those of
Right.
you on the Freedom System.
Now, I
Let's see.
wonder I wonder if it would make sense to do a study of all the data centers that we have out west of us here, because we
Mhm.
got a bunch of them now, to see whether we could, instead of there running a bunch of air conditioners and things, could we take and extract that heat and use that for some, like we were talking about earlier, run some kind of, greenhouses and things like that. So it'll be interesting to look at.
So Amazon's doing a project in Dublin that's doing the same thing, and Meta is doing something in Denmark that delivers hot water to heat local homes. And let's see.
It just makes sense, use that.
Microsoft is doing something near Helsinki, Finland. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of this going on where they're trying to take the waste because
Yeah.
the data centers have huge carbon footprints, and they're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to reuse some of that. And the other thing is they have to cool those computers,
Mhm.
and so all of that waste heat. It's great if they've got an outlet for it, and of course, in those really cold countries, it's most of the year it's beneficial and
Yeah.
helping out. Our last topic for today, Bill, is we're going to talk about the new Kia EV3, which I hadn't even heard about this until you
Oh,
started
it is.
bringing up.
It is. I think I posted about a dozen stories just on the EV3. There was one about the EV9 being the EV of choice in Texas or something like that. But the EV3, and we've had conversations about attractive cars, and the little VinFast SUV and thing. I think they've got Kia's got a winner in this thing.
Oh yeah. Well, once again, they're going back to let's not make all the cars just be ugly.
Yeah. It's attractive. It comes with a couple of battery options. It's got some there's some kind of interesting, the styling. I love the styling. This is if I were going to trade in my Fiat and my Prius, I would strongly consider, trading it for this thing because it's got the range, it's got the space that you'd like to have, and it's a relatively small compact car, which I like. So yeah, and apparently the media likes it too because, like I said, there have been at least a dozen stories that I posted just this morning of about this particular vehicle.
This is Korean automaker's smallest EV.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what information we've got here. Adopts styling cues from the EV9 as well as the EV5. I think he has been doing a pretty good job of making
the only important number is 0 to 60 in 7 seconds.
Yeah, and they want it to compete with the Volvo EX30 with a price tag around $35,000.
Yeah.
And let me see. This one didn't give the what do you say is 0 to 60 around how fast?
7.1 seconds.
Well, that's not fast. I will tell you though, somebody sent me information on the Tata EV, and it had sport mode, and in sport mode it did 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds. And I'm like, well, how slow is it otherwise? I mean, it has a really tiny electric motor. But one of the things is that people don't generally drive fast.
Well, yeah. I mean, do you look at the streets of the traffic in New Delhi or Mumbai or in Calcutta, you're not going to go fast there.
Yeah, I get it. Kia will have 14 EVs in its global lineup by 2027.
That's amazing.
And they're going to have another compact hatchback called the EV4, as well as an electric pickup truck that will be sold in the U.S. Yeah, but that's nice looking car for $35,000.
Now we don't know when it'll be here, and we don't have a price set yet for it. Everything from high 30 to mid 40s is what's being guessed at this point. So we'll just have to wait and see. And it's only 2-wheel drive. It's not all-wheel or 4-wheel. So that, well,
it makes sense when you're in some of these price points, right? Yeah. We were looking at the new Porsche Macan one day, and the Porsche Macan EV starts out at $15,000 higher than the base model gas Porsche Macan. But the thing is, it had it was a premium version. Mm-hmm. It actually had that much in just other upgrades, so it doesn't look like the EV thing really made it more expensive, but yet they're pricing it $15,000 higher, but they're adding all these big upgrades that are a couple $1,000s each that the base model doesn't have. So it's not even comparing apples to apples. And that seems to be the nature. But Kia and Hyundai have really gone out of their way to develop, while they're still making nice looking gas cars, and their gas cars have certainly improved. They're making a real effort to have nice looking EVs and making a real effort to make them inexpensive. My understanding is Hyundai, Kia make money on their EVs. So when we hear all this complaining about that, somebody like Ford and GM, they lose money on every EV they sell.
Or Lucid.
Yeah, well, Lucid's terrible. We won't even talk about Lucid. Lucid, I really don't know what to think about that company. I mean, obviously it was a former Tesla engineer or whatever, but I think their costs just spiraled out of control to produce their first ones. And they're lucky they have the Saudis backing them up so that they can stay in business, in my opinion, even though that's not what they're relying on yet. But at some point, that something's probably going to happen in that regard, because they can't keep burning cash forever. But you've got companies like Tesla, BYD, Hyundai, Kia, Volvo that have already figured out how to manufacture EVs and sell them at a profit. Anyways, that was our last story
That's
for
it.
today, though.
Yep, we've gone long enough here.
And folks, thanks for watching,
Yep.
and we will see you guys next week.